This is what we purchased for our garden, and we purchased 2 of these, and these are from Vego Garden. You can configure them 9 different ways. They're 32 inches tall, and everything is recyclable. These do not have a bottom. It's mainly the corrugated metal that goes around the outside. Let me see the back of the box. Shows you the makeup of the material, and then it breaks down everything that comes in the box. And then at the very bottom you can see all of the different configurations that you can, well, the 9 configurations that you can make. Here's what's actually in the box. So there are 4 of these rounded panels, and then there's 8 of these flat ones. They do have holes, 6 of them on each side, on both the flat ones and the curved ones. Then you have 24 of the acorn type nuts, 48 of the regular type nuts, and then you have 72 of the washers, and then there are 72 of these screws. It does come with this wrench. The wrench works fine on this type of nut, but on these acorn type, it doesn't work as well. This portion of it is a little bigger than it should be, and it doesn't quite go as deep as it should because it stops. So it does come with a wrench, but these screws have a Phillips type end, and there's no screwdriver, just the wrench. It comes with 2 sets of poles. There's 2 2-foot poles, and then there's 2 1.5-foot poles in each of the bags, and it says for 3.5 foot use. But if you actually make a 2x8 bed or 2x6 or whatever, you can use these 2-foot rods to support the bed. It just because the stickers on here kind of makes it seem like that's the only thing you can use it for is a 3.5 foot bed. And then you do end up using all of these rods. There are some threaded fittings in there. There's 2 there and 2 there, and that's to join the 1.5 with the 2-foot rod in each of the bags. There is a set of instructions. There is also this edge liner that goes across around the top of the bed, and that'll go on last. All of the panels have this plastic liner on them, so you will have to take all of this off, both sides. So in this case it's a British green, and then the inside is white. And you see it's on both sides. When you do handle these, if you're concerned about them getting beat up, believe me, they will get beat up very quickly. The paint on them is scratches very easily, and when you scratch it, you'll see white marks all over the place wherever you scratch it. Those are all of the items that come in the box. After inventorying everything, the very next step is going to be removing all of this protective film that's on both sides of every piece. To one side, this is just me, but getting all the way across the top first and then peeling it seems to go quicker than just doing it all over the place. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the film that's on the back side is thinner than on the front side, because the front side film tends to be stick together better and not rip as much, and kind of comes off more in one piece. So there you go, one rounded piece completely done front and back. I'm sure you don't want to watch me do 11 more pieces. So that's what I'm going to do. This is the last of the 4 rounded ones that I've removed the protective film on the front and the back. And one thing I wanted to point out is when you do get these, make sure you look at these bottom edges, because in the other raised bed that we already finished, the bottom edge was bent on all of the corners of the curved pieces, and then also on the rectangular side pieces, corners were bent as well. So you just want to look, I mean, it's easy to fix, but just so you're aware that you may find that the corners are dented. Just to make it easier on myself to find the nut, bolt, or washer that I need, I've separated the bolts, nuts, washers, and then the acorn nuts. And what I've got now is, since this is going to be a 2x8 garden bed, what I have is, you can see I've got them overlapping so that I can start putting the bolts in it. It doesn't matter which side is top or bottom right now, but whatever side that you decide you want to be your top, what you have to do, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is going to be my top up here, and that's going to be the bottom of the garden bed. So I'm going to take a bolt or screw, stick it in from the outside. So this is the inside, and the green is the outside. So the screw or bolt, whichever you want to call it, comes from the outside to the inside. Put a washer on, and then in this case, because it's this is going to be my top, you want to put one of these acorn nuts on. I don't know for sure, but I believe the acorn nuts are at the top, because if you're reaching into the garden, I think it's just for your protection. So these top 2 all the way across will have acorn nuts on the top. Otherwise you would have the regular screw, and then you would have the regular nut on top of that, and then you would have the threading from the screw sticking out, which could possibly injure you. So I believe that's why it's the way that it is. And when you put all this together, you don't want to completely tighten it down at all. Just loosely put everything on until you're ready to tighten everything down. Because the threaded portion of the screw is much smaller than the hole, so you will have some shifting in the material. So when you're ready to tighten it down, you want to make sure that you pull these apart so that you're aligning it, but you're also maximizing how much space you're going to get out of these containers. So for right now, I'm just going to get these 2, and then these 2, and then this next set of 2, which will join 4 panels together. And then I'm going to go to the opposite side and put the screw, the washer, and then a regular nut on the bottom 2 and then I'll put the other ones in as well. All right, so I'm sure nobody wants to watch me put a bunch of nuts and screws on this. My next step is going, after I finish putting the rest of the nuts and screws in, I'm gonna make sure it's pulled, and then everything will be tightened down, and then I'll start working on the other side, which will be 4 more panels, and then after that will be the 2 end pieces that I'll do. I've already pulled these apart to make sure I'm maximizing how much of the material I'm using to make the garden bed, and now that I have them pretty much pulled out as much as possible, I'm using a cross tip screwdriver on the back side, and then using the wrench that they provided, and I'm tightening the top ones all the way across, and then I'm going to go tighten all of the bottom ones all the way across, and then work the inside ones, because I want to make sure I get it locked in place before I start trying to get the other ones. Otherwise it's just going to come out of alignment. Here is one complete 4-panel side, and as I already mentioned, I got my 2 acorn nuts at the top edge here, and then the rest are just regular nuts. Since I am doing a 2x8 bed, I'm going to join these 2 pieces together to make one end, and then I'll join another 2 pieces to make the other end of the bed. And again, it will be the same exact process. It is possible to do this with one person, but it would definitely be easier with 2. Normally I would have help, but I don't have any help right now. But again, you're going to have 2 acorn nuts on the top, and then the rest will be the regular nuts. Go to this side, get this side started. Do want to make sure you pull these apart. You know, once you get a few in there, you'll get your holes to line up a lot easier. And again, you don't want to tighten them too much initially. And in this case, since it's much easier to handle, I can stand it up and finish tightening everything. So make sure everything's pulled apart. Start by tightening one end, which right now I'm tightening the top, but technically it's the bottom. And then I'll flip it over and take it's locked in place, so I can tighten the rest of them. Alright, that is one end piece to the 2x8 bed. Another method for putting all the nuts and bolts on the two end pieces is you could stand them up on end, but you may have an issue with it standing up, or it might fall. So you could do this. I just think it's easier to have it lay flat initially when you're putting your nuts and bolts in it. This is important to note, that when you put your end pieces on, you want to ensure that it is to the outside of the straight panel, and then you want to follow the same steps with your screws and nuts. Definitely make sure that this piece is underneath this flat panel, and then you're going to do 2 acorn nuts again, and then the rest regular nuts. There you go. So that's one end piece put on, and then you want to follow the same procedure. Make sure you pull it tight, tighten one of the top nuts, one of the bottom nuts, and then tighten the rest of them. Another method for doing this is you could stand it up on end, sort of similar to how this end piece is standing up now, but either you would have to flip it over, or you would have to work from the bottom up. And for me, it's just easier doing it sitting on the, with everything sitting up on this table. A lot easier on the back as well. All right, so now the bed is on the concrete, and I had to take it off the table to put the rest of it back together. Now what we're doing is we're taking off the nut on the second one down from the top, and then the nut off the fifth one down from the top, in order to put these 2 foot long rods across to support the bed.
Good.
Go ahead and start the rod on this one, Gus. Start the rod so it'll hold the screw on, so I can go over to the other side. That's good. You got the screwdriver?
Yeah.
When you take the nuts off, you want to make sure that you leave the washers in place, because the washers need to be on there when you put the rods in. All right, that's it, except for putting the molding or the edging around the top. careful on these portions right here where it joins together. Be a little slower. Careful. Carefully putting it on. Don't stretch it too much. Kind of lay on it. Push it on more than pulling. That's it. Yeah, because this will expand and contract, we're just going to leave it like that for now. Let it do its thing and then cut it later, because if we cut it now, it'll probably end up like 2-3 inches short. Last thing to do is take it over to the garden, put it in there. This here is a 2x8 bed. When you put it together, the first 2 sets of holes all the way around will have acorn nuts. The bottom 4 all the way around are the regular nuts. You do want to make sure that the outside pieces, the curved outside pieces, are to the outside of these panels on both sides, on both ends. You don't want these 2 outside panels to the inside. You want them to the outside. As far as your inside support for the bed, there are these, in this case because it's a 2x8 bed, there are the 2-foot rods. So on the 3rd bolt down is 1 rod, and then the 5th bolt down is another rod, and you'll notice that they're evenly spaced to the inside. So it's on the 2nd set of bolts to the inside, and you will have to remove the nuts that you may have already put in place putting it together. Take the nut off, leave the washer, and then put the rod on, and then tighten the screw into the rod on both sides for both of them. These don't have a bottom. The main reason why we're using these beds is because there used to be a bunch of black walnut trees in this yard, and we have vole problems, so we're going to use these raised beds, and then we're going to put some 1/2-inch wire mesh on the bottom to prevent voles from coming up. We already have landscape fabric down, and then after the beds are in place and the 1/2-inch wire mesh is in place, we're going to put the cedar chips all around the garden, and the cedar chips will help with insect control, natural insect control.